Hi, this is Durban, and I'm going to do a tutorial today on the salt chipping I did when painting the Stug and the hard edge camo pattern, how I achieved that. I'll go over all the techniques and the colours I used, and at the end of it we'll have this. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, so this is the first stage, and what you're trying to do is you're achieving the colour that your deepest chipping will be. So I don't think I need to show you how to paint something a flat colour, but I primed it first, black, then I sprayed it with whole red, that's my colour, and then just to sort of make it a little bit more durable, I sprayed it with satin varnish. Now I use this Joann's satin varnish. It's really cheap. It goes through the airbrush undiluted, and I can get, it's 250 mils for about $13, so really cheap, really easy to use. You just got to make sure you shake it up because it does settle. They do a matte varnish as well, and I use that. So this is the surface here. Now you got to make sure it's all dry, and yeah, the surface is nice and strong, because basically what you're going to do is you're going to put salt on it, and what you do is you get a paintbrush, nothing special, this is a really dodgy paintbrush I use for PVA, dip it in a bit of water, and then just where you want the chipping to be, you're really fine covering of water. I only run my hand over it to try and get rid of excess. This just helps the salt stick to the water. Now the salt mixture I've got in here is a mixture of table salt, salt flakes, sea salt. You want a variation in the size of the grains, and then you just sprinkle it on. Now that one there is massive, so we'll get rid of that. Salt flakes are really good because you can break them down by hand to sort of change the size. But we just sprinkle on. We'll do really heavy chipping so you can see the effect. Turn it up and just tap it so the loose ones will fall off, because your airbrush, when you spray the next level, will just blow all that off. So you can see there's a fair bit on there because we're doing this quite heavily, and that's basically the first part of the salt chipping. So everywhere the salt is that you should see the whole red basically in the end. So the next step, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to capture this on camera, I'll try to do it, but it's really me just spraying paint through the airbrush, is I'll do a 50-50 mix of Vallejo Model Air Yellow Ochre and Citadel Sunset, Avalon Sunset. This is the thing that caused me so much problem with the Stug. It's the first time I used Model Air, and it's just a really different paint from what I'm used to. But anyway, let's move on. What I also do is, once I'm got that coat down, it doesn't take it long for the dry, and then I just do some highlights on it. It's not really going to show up on this, very well, but we'll just do a gradient down there. And I achieve the highlights by just mixing a little bit of white, and I also sort of thin it with metal medium. Alrighty, so let me get all that set up, and if I can capture it on the camera, I will. So you will blow some salt off with the airbrush, but that's alright. And some of the salt will move around, and you just got to be careful with this, take your time, be patient. Try to keep the pressure relatively low, and I spray from a fair distance back when I do this, just because you're just trying not to knock that salt off. Basically the first pass. Okay, just going to add some highlights. I'm going to pick a direction to be the top and just come down from it. Yeah, you can see that and I suppose it's important when you actually do this on the tank, you do it right, because you got to add your highlights now, because as you add your other colours, you're going to cover all this up. Again, you'll get a little salt moving, but don't stress over it. It's nothing to worry about. It will just help you get chipping of different colours happening. Okay, so that is the first step done. Now you got to wait for this to dry, and I mean really, really dry, because when you see the next step what we do to it, you need seriously dry paint. Okay, so now the paint is dry. This is really salt chipping done, right? We could flick off the salt now and we'd get the effect, but we're going to move on and do the hard edged camo pattern over the top. Okay, so what you need now, and or what I've used, is blue tack. Up here silly putty is better for that, but I don't have any, so blue tack it is. So I just roll out strips of blue tack and position them down. Now you've got to remember when you're doing this, that where you're putting these ones down is the colour. So in this instance the yellow, that's what's going to actually be seen. So work from a pattern, you know, a source image to give you an idea, but we're just going to do some interesting strips. Now you've got to be careful, you don't want to knock the salt off in the areas that you're not going to cover. I'll try and do this on camera. Sort of just push it down. And create your shape. You kind of want it to be, when you're doing these patterns anyway, you don't want it to be straight. You can do many complex shapes and things like that along the way, but we're just going to do some lines. Obviously when you do this on an actual model, you're going to need to make sure you push it right into the creases. You can use different tools, like when I was doing it on the Stug, I was using this part and just pushing it right down, so making sure we're creating the lines. And we'll just come up and do the top corner like that as well, just for the fun of it. So what we've got now is, these are the areas, these are the areas where the yellow, so where the blue tack is, that's where the yellow is going to be in the final product. So the next part is you work through your colours from lightest to dark. So next is green, plane flying past. So what I start off with is, I'll start with a base of German camo dark green. Okay, then I'll start my highlights by mixing in olive green, like 50-50 mix will be my first highlight. So base coat, German camo dark green, then 50-50 mix with olive green for the first highlight, and then just a tiny bit of white in again, just the light. And when I'm doing the highlights, obviously again adding a little bit of the metal medium, what that does is that creates that helps blend it in, you know, so it's not as a solid colour, it's got a little bit of a transparency to what you're spraying. Okay, so I will get those colours on now, and I'll show a little bit of that as I go along. So now we're ready to add the green. Just got to work it in next to the blue tack. Doesn't have to be perfect, because when you're spraying from above, you won't hit those with other colours anyway. Okay, so you can see there. So actually this is a good example. You can see around the salt it attracts moisture, so you've got to be careful. Doing this on a really humid day is probably not advisable. Alrighty, so that's the base green done. Okay, so first green highlight again, just from above. And just work our way down. And I'll just focus more on the top. And with your highlights, spray from above, don't try and do the angles, because what you'll do if you spray from above, the little overhangs will help you create a sort of a darker edge and more contrast between the colours. Okay, I'll just mix up the next highlight, just adding a little bit of white to that mix. Okay, and now I'm just going to do the final highlight, and I'll just focus on the top edge. Alrighty, okay, now we need to let this dry. Okay, so the green's nice and dry now, so again it's the same process, and what we'll do here is, so this is where the green's going to be, okay, so that's the important part here. Okay, so I'm going to run it in next to the green here. Again, you've got to be careful with the salt in the areas that you're going to leave. You don't want to knock that off now. And just work it in. Make sure it's nice and tight against, you know, if you're going to go up against another one, nice and tight, but try not to push then this edge that way. Again, this is really just a matter of what's the shape you're going for. You know, what's the pattern, and you just do it. Hopefully you've got a reference or something that you're working from. You can see here I've nicked a little bit of salt off. Okay, here I'm going to run in a bit. I'm actually going to take up this whole corner. I'm going to run it in and down. I'll use a little bit more, but I won't run it all the way along. Now, if you do, it's easier to do it if you do one big strip on, but if you do join them together, you just got to watch out for little bits like this where it bulbs out. That looks a little bit unnatural, what you're trying to do. We'll do a bit up here, coming down. And so everything that's green now will become brown, like so, that we don't cover up. If I can roll this out. I'll just take this little bit off the end here, it's not being used, put a little blob coming up in the middle, because that otherwise would have been a really big brown space. Here we have it. Now I'm going to spray it brown. Okay, so it's going to start off with a 50-50 mix of black and German camo medium brown. Okay, then it will be basically straight German camo medium brown as the first highlight, and then a little bit of white added to that as the second highlight. Okay, I'll get that happening now. Okay, now we're adding the brown. just got to make sure with your last colour you get it right in there. And you cover all the parts you're meant to. Okay, that's the base done. I'll do the first highlight now. Okay, here we go, highlighting. Again, same process, work your way down from the top. Okay, I'll just mix up the next highlight. Okay, and here's the final highlight. Okay, so now we've got to wait for that to dry, but then the fun begins. Okay, so now the brown's dry. Now we do the fun part and see if this all works. Okay, so we pull off the blue tack. Now it'll stick as it comes off. You just take your time. Alright, and you just comes off, and as you get some in your hand, then you start using that to pull the other chunks off. Again, we'll peel down the middle here. I'll take the bit off the back now, I don't need it. And you'll see that the salt will start to come away as well at the same time. And you just, again, get all the blue tack off. And where you got any lumps of salt, you can use the blue tack to pull that off, and it'll pull the paint around it off as well. Okay, almost finished. Okay. And there it is. So that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you guys liked it. The only thing I'd say about this technique is you've got to use an airbrush. You may be able to do this with some, with the spray cans, with the rattle cans. I'm not sure. They probably come out too strong and would knock the salt off. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed this. Have fun, keep hobbying, and I'll talk to you next time.